Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and this is a Dungeons and Dragons Lost Mine of Phandelver DM guide. It's not really appropriate and suitable for players, so if you are hanging out here now and watching this live stream and you're playing the Lost Mine of Phandelver, your Dungeon Master will not be happy because there are definitely going to be spoilers in this video as I go through it. Now, Nezznar the Black Spider is the main villain. And as all villains go, you'll find that they work provided you understand the villain. And I found when I ran the Lost Mine of Phandelver that I did a pretty poor job. So why am I doing a video on explaining how to deal with Nezznar? You learn from your mistakes. Hopefully I have learned from my mistakes. But if you're unsure about where the Lost Mine of Phandelver is, you will find it in the Dungeons and Dragons starter set. Okay, so Nezznar is the main villain, as I just said before. He's also a drow. Of all things, he's a drow. Not only is he a drow, he's quite a mysterious drow villain. And he sort of revolves around the entire adventure. You don't actually meet him. He's in the background. He's the mastermind. He's the one who pulls all the strings and has all these puppets. He has control of a network of bandits and gangs and goblin tribes all through the area, which is what makes him so dangerous. So even though the players think they're travelling from Neverwinter through to Phandalin, they don't know that they're getting themselves into a big, huge, hairy mess, or a cobweb, you might say, which is why part of the one of the chapters actually refers to the web. So Nezznar has lots of agents, and these agents have actually followed the Rockseeker Brothers to Wave Echo Cave, and they know its location. This is part of the problem for the Rockseekers, is that they thought they had kept everything on the low and that nobody knew exactly what was going on, but that is in fact untrue. And they know exactly where it is, and they have been, as the players have been doing their thing and Gundren has been doing his thing, they've been exploring and seeking out sections of the cave. Now, it's not going terribly well, but what has happened during that process is some of Gundren's brothers have been dealt with. Nezznar wants Wave Echo Cave for the forge that exists within. And it's quite a large location, Wave Echo Cave, and there's a forge of spells located within. And the energy in this great forge allows the creator, or whoever has it, to create magic items. So crafting magic items is a big deal. It's very hard to do, which is what makes it so dangerous if it falls into Neznar's hands. And in fact, actually, it makes it quite dangerous if it falls into the player's hands, but we'll deal with that some other day. So Nezznar has disposed of Gundren Rockseeker's brothers in various ways. So, for example, his brother, is it Thaden? Is it Thaden? He's been killed. They found the Rockseekers, the two brothers, camped out by Wave Echo Cave, and while Gundren was off doing business, Thaden has been killed, unfortunately. His other brother, Nundro, that's a little bit different. Nundro has actually managed to survive, which is great. He's been captured, he's still being held, and Gundren Rockseeker is the next target. This is where we start off in the intro to this adventure. But the Black Spider can't afford for anyone else to know the location of Wave Echo Cave, which means that at some point the player's characters are going to pop up on the radar in terms of a problem to be dealt with. There is, as I said, a huge raft of different agents that Nezznar has access to, and one of those is actually residing in the location that the players are destined to explore and drop off their wagon supply of mining bits and pieces. Now, for those of you who are wondering about Gundren Rockseeker, I have done 2 videos on Gundren Rockseeker. Who is Gundren Rockseeker and why help Gundren Rockseeker? So if you haven't seen those, go check them out. They will certainly be reasonably helpful to you, I think. The main or key antagonist that Nezznar is actually utilising is an individual by the name of Glassstaff, or Iano Glassstaff Albrick, and he is the leader of the Redbrand Gang. Quite a nasty bunch who are generally just giving the people of Phandalin a really hard time. And he's got, I sort of see this as like a Western. It plays out like a Western. Glassstaff is a wizard, an adventuring wizard who has linked up with Nezznar for a variety of different reasons, probably money and power and influence. All of those would be useful to Glassstaff, and Nezznar is simply using him as a tool. There's not necessarily any sort of link that would mean that Nezznar would go out of his way to help Glassstaff. Glassstaff is simply a tool to be used so that Nezznar can get what he wants. And through Glassstaff, Nezznar has managed to pretty much control all of Phandalin. He's suppressed the people of Phandalin in such a way that it's made it impossible for them to sort of operate without having to pay bribes or extortion money, shakedown money, generally have to put up with their bad behaviour, all that sort of stuff. And they have a hideout located not too far from Phandalin. It's pretty much just on the outskirts, and the players will have an opportunity to try and find that location and get rid of them, provided they can make that all work. Nezznar also has another major key individual who works for him, and that is King Groll. Now, he is the leader of Cragmaw Goblins, and he works for Nezznar, and he's got essentially two major hideouts or locations that the players can explore at their leisure. And he has an array of not just goblins, but bugbears. There's even a few orcs that are aligned with King Groll for obvious reasons. He's tough, he's nasty, and from the picture I just showed you not so long ago, he looks more like a bugbear than he looks like a goblin, but that's beside the point. And goblins, hobgoblins, orcs, they tend to sort of all fall together into the same family. So hence, King Groll has got a lot of power around. He's got two major locations that the players will explore, and these serve a really important focus. One is Cragmaw Hideout, which is located not too far from the road as people would travel from Neverwinter through to Phandalin. And the Cragmaw Goblins have managed to isolate Phandalin by ambushing merchants and supplies heading to Phandalin by road. This is all part of Neznar's plan. Cut off the location that you need to gain access to, control or kill those people who would threaten you. And he hasn't gone out of his way to kill the population of Phandalin. Nezznar hasn't done that. What he is using them as a way of controlling them, because there are still things that they can provide him that he would find useful. That's not because he's a nice guy. Nezznar is not a nice guy. So that means that most of the supplies that are travelling from anywhere to Phandalin don't usually make it, because they're being stored in the Cragmaw hideout cave location. They also have another hideout, which is where King Groll can be found, and you will eventually find Gundren Rockseeker there, and that is Cragmaw Castle. And that is absolutely packed with goblins, whether that be goblins, hobgoblins, bugbears, and there's even some orcs who make sort of travel back and forth from the castle and do a bit of patrolling or scouting or just generally raiding. That's what orcs generally do, right? They don't play a huge part in the adventure, but certainly there is. So this means he's not only is Nezznar controlling Phandalin, he's controlling all of the areas around Phandalin. Not everybody in that location is working for Nezznar. So somebody like the Green Dragon, Venom Fang, no, Venom Fang doesn't work for anybody. He's just his own person, okay? He'll do what he sees fit. And somebody like Mormisk, the Wraith in Wave Echo Cave, he's not interested in Nezznar in the slightest. In fact, they're gonna be at loggerheads with each other because they have cross purposes. There's also another factor built into this, and that is that Nezznar has a spy network. It's very hard for anybody to do anything without Nezznar finding out about it. And this is because he has a couple of doppelgangers that he has hired. These doppelgangers have infiltrated different locations, not necessarily into Phandalin itself, but you could use them like that if you wanted. They're often holed up in locations that the players will be exploring. And you'll find one in Cragmaw Castle, and there should be also one in Wave Echo Cave. But that doesn't mean that they can't move around and you can't use them in other ways. They are a very, very useful tool. Somebody was asking me about the doppelgangers and how they might be utilized in his game, and hopefully he shows up for this live stream and we'll have a discussion about it. Okay, so that means there's pretty much nothing that these doppelgangers can't find out about, because they can infiltrate Phandalin, they can even infiltrate Glassstaff and King Grill's gangs and hideouts and find out, make sure that they're all doing what Nezznar wants. So Nezznar knows everything there is to know. So almost impossible to get away with doing anything without him knowing about it. Neznar's rather unusual though. Nezznar is one of those drow who managed to actually get himself into a position and become a spellcaster or wizard, which is unheard of. And it's really very, very rare for a male drow to wind up being a spellcaster. It's mostly reserved for females. So that means he's not only incredibly resourceful, incredibly smart, he's well thought of within the drow community. Which is a bit odd, because Nezznar is supposed to be portrayed as an adventurer who has decided to take sort of control of what's taking place above ground. It seems a little bit unusual. Drow don't usually get too involved with the business above ground, you know, but in this case, Nezznar has. So that means that Nezznar is incredibly dangerous because he is a spellcaster, not just a spellcaster, but a wizard, so has lots of flexibility in his spellcasting. Getting past Nezznar to Wave Echo Cave, or his location where his hideout is, should be almost impossible, because how can you get past him undetected? It's very unlikely that he would not have used something like the alarm spell. The alarm spell would be a no-brainer, particularly set up at the very entrance of Wave Echo Cave. Now we're going to talk about that, because you'll notice when you have a look at the stat block, which I'll pull up, that he doesn't seem to have that spell in his repertoire, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't have a scroll that allows him to cast that spell. Just a point I would like to put out there for those of you who were thinking, well, how is it they managed to sneak in and get to Nezznar, and Nezznar was unaware of their presence in Wave Echo Cave? It's almost impossible that's likely to happen. There's a whole lot of information on pages 49 and 50 about Nezznar, how to roleplay him, what the minions are that you would use for Nezznar. It's basically giant spiders. My problem with this is, when I ran this, I made the mistake of running it like a conventional Dungeons and Dragons adventure, where, you know, the players finally get to defeat the bad guy. And actually, I think that was a mistake. The mistake is thinking that Nezznar isn't going to escape or get the drop on the players, because there should be a way to make it much more difficult. Even if he hasn't cast something like alarm at the entrance to that cave, there should be some sort of alarm system set in place to notify people of what's going on. Nezznar doesn't have total control of Wave Echo Cave. Even though he's there is a particular individual by the name of Mormisk the Wraith. He protects Wave Echo Cave, and they are at loggerheads, okay? Mormisk controls the undead there, and Nezznar is using his forces to try to battle his way through the undead, and there's still quite a few there. So it's actually made it quite difficult for him to gain control of Wave Echo Cave. He hasn't He's only got control of parts of it, and the majority of it is controlled by Mormisk. So there is an antagonist towards Nezznar. So Nezznar does not like Mormisk, and Mormisk does not like Nezznar. They know that they both exist, but there is actually a war taking place between the two. It says in the adventure that Nezznar would be curious about the characters, but will only quiz them. Well, this is what I have an issue with. When you say, okay, he's curious, but he wouldn't kill them, as soon as the players realise they have come up against the big baddie, which they have, they will. He'll be there. What are they going to do? They're going to try to polish him off. They're going to take him out. They're going to find some way to hurt him as bad as they possibly can. I totally get that. That makes complete sense to me. What doesn't make any sense is the way that they have structured it, because if you have a look at here, it says here, he'll quiz the characters at length regarding their identities and allegiances. Well, that's only going to be possible if Nezznar has the drop on them, or the players allow him time to do a monologue. I don't know that many players are going to allow the baddie to have a monologue before they have a fight, which is probably what's going to happen. It also says that he admits to everything that's been taking place that he's done. He admits that he's the Black Spider. He admits to having control over the Red Brands and the Cragmaw Goblins. But this is where I just don't understand why they have structured it this way. They say that he will surrender or propose cooperation to get rid of the monsters that are impeding his exploration of the Wave Echo Cave to get to the Forge of Spells, but then he will turn on them, so he can't be trusted. But I feel like there has to be a fight first for him to have the upper hand before a conversation like this would take place. What I'm thinking of is James Bond and Goldfinger, where Goldfinger has James Bond strapped to a table, has the laser pointed at his groin, and it's working its way slowly towards his precious jewels. And he's asked him a whole lot of questions, and in fact, Goldfinger doesn't actually ask that many questions. If anything, he has him in his power, under his control, and he could. I believe the words from Goldfinger is, "No, I don't expect you to talk. I expect you to die." And I would imagine that Nezznar could be played like this. Now, if you're going to go the way of, I want to have a conversation between Nezznar and the players work out, I would go with, hit them with Nezznar, use the darkness. He has the ability to cast darkness, and those giant spiders, and get the giant spiders to web them up, because the chances are they won't be able to see in magical darkness. Whether they have dark vision or not, that's a huge disadvantage. The spiders will have the drop. They can web them all up from above. Once they're all tied up and confined or restrained, then they can move in and whittle them down. And the spiders don't need to kill them. With the final bite that they make, they can simply have them fall unconscious. That'll obviously be the instructions that Nezznar gives. Once they're all tied up and at his mercy, and that all their gear has been removed, then it makes a lot more sense to allow them a chance to have a conversation with Nezznar when they don't have the power anymore. Otherwise, you're never going to get to that conversation. It wouldn't work. I just don't see any point in it whatsoever, because it'll never happen. I know my players would just go straight for him and take him out, and that'd be it. End of story. No more Nezznar. So let's look at Neznar's stat block, because Neznar's stat block it's not hugely complicated for a spellcaster, but it's complicated enough that it needs to be broken down a little bit, right? So here's a close-up view of the top section. Nezznar, so he's challenge rating 2. He has an armor class of 11, but 14 with his mage armor. Don't forget, he will have cast mage armor at the beginning of the day. He should not be entering any kind of combat without it. I would change out some of the spells if you feel you need to, but honestly, as I said, something like Alarm can just be a scroll, or you can use some other means to actually alarm the front of Wave Echo Cave or other locations within Wave Echo Cave to notify him if somebody gets past his spy network. He doesn't have a high strength, but his redeeming feature is obviously his high intelligence. Remember, Nezznar shouldn't be faced with just on his own. He should be facing Nezznar in the final battle in a situation where he has allies and minions. And you don't need to just have the giant spiders. You can pull some of his forces from other locations within the cave to his final point where they will meet the characters. He can set up an ambush, pick a location that will work the best for you, and so that you have the upper hand. It should not be an easy fight, not in the slightest. The numbers are all just numbers. Remember, his dark vision of 120 feet means that even in darkness, if he casts darkness, he would be affected by that. If you've got somebody like a warlock, it's going to be a little bit different, particularly if they have a particular feature which allows them to see in magical darkness. But that's all beside the point. You don't cast the darkness on Nezznar. What you do is you cast the darkness on the players and the area they're going to be functioning in. So the spiders won't have an issue with something like this. Darkness means nothing to them. Remember, they're going to use their good old tremor sense. They have blind sight, well, not tremor sense, blind sight up to 10 feet. They have darkness, but they have that blind sight. And if you put enough webbing in the room on the ground, they can feel the vibrations through the webbing to give them an idea of what's going on, which is what the web sense is all about. So while in contact with webs, the webs know the exact location of other creatures that they come in contact with. So make sure you have had your spiders lay out a web within the room. When the players enter that room, you drop darkness down and they can then get to them and deal with them pretty efficiently. Whether that be webbing them up or biting them, it doesn't matter. And they should be getting in all their attacks pretty efficiently. And the players shouldn't really be getting anywhere. Sorry about this. I just need a drink of water. Okay, he has a staff. The spider staff is... pardon me. Forget about that spider staff. It's a joke. Just don't even bother. It's wasting your time. Use the spells. I wouldn't go for invisibility unless you're having to flee. If Nezznar needs to escape, then use invisibility. Because remember, invisibility doesn't stay up indefinitely. It'll come down eventually. And your absolute, the best thing you can do is use that darkness. Magic, missile and shield are all very well, but truthfully I don't think that a battle with Nezznar is going to go well. So try to use the minions to do all the work to get the players into a bad situation. That's my advice on how to play Nezznar, essentially. I suppose I could say more, but we're going to open it up. So if you found this video helpful or informative, please share and like the video. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing to see more videos like this. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. If you want to support my channel, you supported my channel by watching this video, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. That was really helpful. If you want to continue to support me, watch more of my videos. I don't do Patreon, but down in the description you'll find affiliate links to their book depository and Amazon, where you can buy stuff online. I get a small commission. You pay exactly the same price as normal. Just go through the link and then buy whatever you like. You don't have to buy the thing I've linked to, just go through the link. And start popping in those questions and that feedback in the chat box now while I'm still here. Otherwise, if you're not part of the live stream, then I would suggest typing in your questions into the comments section or your feedback. Have I left something out? It's quite possible that I have. I had a discussion with one of my friends about this particular situation scenario. He played it out. It worked really well. So even though I didn't get a chance to test it myself, one of my friends who's a dungeon master did, and it worked very, very nicely. And he told me he had quite a lot of fun. And he had discussed it with me, his plans with Nezznar and the party, and it worked like a dream. So yes, comments, and otherwise, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.